Good morning, good morning. And welcome. In that moment, let us hold another intention for ourselves this morning and for the world after that beautiful song and the beautiful meditation. Just one more intention for what you want to carry forward to your day to share with our family called the world. So hold your intention of what you want to carry with you for the rest of the day. Thank you. Whew, what a morning. So today we're still here, and from our head to our hearts this morning is where we're headed. I want to read a few quotes and a part of a book that I had read last night. And the quote I'm going to read, I assumed was from Pope Leo XIV, but I was informed it may not be. But beauty and truth, it doesn't matter where it comes from, because it speaks so, not just loudly, but it rings true in our hearts. And it helps us get from our head to our hearts. So here it goes. To be called woke in a world that sleeps through suffering is no insult. It is the gospel. Woke means awakened by compassion, guided by truth, humbled by grace, committed to justice, not just for some, but for all. The irony is that we attempt to disown our difficult stories to appear more whole, more acceptable. But our wholeness, even our wholeheartedness, actually depends on the integration of all our experiences, including our falls and failures. Brené Brown. As I was researching my topic, I ran into Carl Jung. He said hello. Carl Jung says, knowing your darkness, knowing your own darkness, is the best method for dealing with the darkness of other people. And that's where I'm kind of going today. I'm asking myself, as a spiritual warrior, as a person committed to social justice, to grace, to kindness, to compassion, where's my work? And boy, did it come to me. In many things. Because to face hurt and disappointment, to face our mistakes, our struggles, takes courage. To gain wisdom, we need to face hurt, we need to self-reflect, we need to connect. And the way we connect becomes the way we think and the way we behave. Ouch. What stories are we making up about our struggle? Brené Brown says, many times we make up our stories to protect ourselves and avoid painful recognition and responsibility. She says rewriting our story is based on learning new ways to hold pain and to be able to communicate compassionately, and that is what transforms our life. You know, as I looked, I realized that when I choose authenticity, I have to choose worthiness of exactly who I am. I don't always like what I see. I don't always like how I behave when I'm upset or I'm angry. But being authentic and being worthy is about not succumbing to false images and false identities. We spend a whole lot of time trying to tell a story and kind of show the world an image of what we think is correct, instead of going deep and trying to connect with what's really important to us: belonging, caring, kindness, acceptance. And in order to get those things, surprise, we have to give them. And today our country, or actually yesterday, our leader decided to bomb another country. And Carl Jung says survival of the human species takes two really important factors. The first one, surprise, surprise, is self-reflection. Doing our work, doing our spiritual work. And the second is the ability to hold the tension between opposites. Because we only can become adaptable if we can carry not my way or the highway or either or, but both and. Take that in for a minute. Both and. Because when we have an identity that determines our righteousness, we're on the wrong path. Our identity, our story, can be changed no matter what's suffering, no matter what has happened. But our identity is a cosmic identity. It is bigger than our ego. It is bigger than our opinions. And when we are in a world of people battling their darkness, their egos, their need to overpower instead of empower, we have to take a look at how we're behaving in our minds. And then we take a look at our hearts. Because many times my mind is grasping from my ego. I don't know about you, but I can find that certainly when I take a look to self-reflect. What if we take a real strong promise to ourselves in the self-reflection to be able to hold the tensions of opposites? What we think is bad, how can we hold that? What we think is wrong, how can we carry that? Because in order to have compassion, we must rise above those false idols we have going on in our minds. They are false idols. To me, people are like a piece of art. What they wear, how they carry themselves, and it's beautiful. And I love beauty in all forms. But so many times we make judgments of what is beautiful and, oh my goodness, it doesn't quite make the mark. We miss that beauty in our experience. Picasso had a really difficult time in the early 20th century. People thought, they told him he should go take his box of crayons and go back to kindergarten, Now, who's laughing, right? Because it was different, because it was abstract, because it was out of the box. It was revolutionary. And things sometimes scare us when they don't fit the conformity of what we understand or what we know. That's why when people that don't look like us or think like us become a threat. We, as spiritual warriors in this philosophy, we talk about oneness a lot. And yet, we do have an alter ego that we point at a lot. And I am guilty as anyone of that. You know, my biggest prayer, finally, after having very dark thoughts about some of our leaders, I realized that I want that person to be woke. I want that person to wake up to their humanity. No cruelty. Wake up for the justice of all. And it takes so much heart, and it takes so much setting down our weapons of judgment. Our weapons of judgment towards money, no money, homeless, not homeless, stuck up, this or that. Because we're all struggling on the same journey with our stories of not enough, of wanting to belong, of wanting to be loved. And when we turn within and look at our dark side, that is the only way we can change it. And this quote I loved also. He says, choosing authenticity and worthiness is an act of resistance. And he goes on to say that it is, and I got to find it here, that we cannot change anything unless we can accept it. Condemning something does not liberate anything, it oppresses it. I've been condemning our leader, and I feel righteous because of the cruelty, because of the judgment. But as a spiritual warrior and a practitioner, how can I build a platform to assist my awakening, to hold the tension of opposites, so that I am not against anything, but for something, as Ernest Holmes says? Be for something and against nothing. That is probably something most of us may not attain in this lifetime. But it's because we haven't gone deeper. If we really look at when people are cruel, it's because they've forgotten who they are. And we may never be able to change their mind, but we must stop it in our own hearts. We must not do the very thing that they're doing. How do we do that? How do we hold truth, social justice? How do we hold people who are being harmed, hurt, killed, and not be the victim, and not be the hero, and not have a villain? How do we do that? Because if we are truly all one, I don't know. If each story has a hero, a villain, and a victim, how do we transcend that? I think the only way to transcend that is to go into our hearts and really think about our judgments and how we could find compassion for people who have lost their way. That's not an easy thing to do. That is extremely painful for me because I see the cruelty and I see the pain. And I want to save people from that. I want to save myself from pain and suffering. But only through deep contemplation can we rise above not being able to hold opposites. Because without holding opposites, we can't adapt to things. Does that make sense? We can't adapt if we can't look at the other, if we can't try to figure out the other side. It's pretty easy when we talk about narcissism and ego. But the work is here. And I want to tell a story. I've shared this years ago, but I want to share a story on perception. I foster adopted an older 50-year-old beautiful soul with developmental disabilities who had a condition called Williams-Sett syndrome. And her name was Paula. And Paula used to come to church quite a bit in her wheelchair with me. And Elijah spent at least 2 years helping me take care of Paula in my home when she got very ill. And Paula loved everything. She kissed everything. It was a balloon, it was a coffee cup, it was the wall. She just expressed such love because Williams-Sett syndrome, it's part of it. And so she would look at this microphone and say, "I love you, microphone," and give it a kiss. However, because holding opposites, Paula had another trait, which was called Tourette's. So she went from this incredibly loving soul kissing everything, especially balloons. She loved balloons. To cussing. Depends on where you caught her in. So Paula dropped out of school in the 7th grade. She was from Boston, and her sister, who was a few years older, had to kind of take care of her after their father died. And she resented her sister, and she was a Bostonian woman who was very, no frills, not a whole lot of warmth, just mwah. And she was very, very hard on Miss Paula. And we were enjoying our lives, and Paula got ill and ended up in the rest home here in Santa Cruz. And my foster son and daughter, we would always go visit and do arts and crafts, and her sister would show up and help us do arts and crafts. And in the room, there was 3 beds. One by the door, curtain, one in the middle, curtain, and one by the window. Paula finally moved to the very end where she could see the birds and the trees. And, we just were having a good time as much as we could as she's getting better. There was a woman in her 50s in the middle bed. And on the bed towards the door, there was a woman who, her children were screaming at each other over the will because she was dying. And then Paula was on the other side, laughing hysterically, kissing everything, just a joy. The woman in the middle had worked for the county here in Santa Cruz for, 25 years. And I thought she had broken her hip or something because she was totally with it, and fun to talk to. And we enjoyed a few jokes and laughs. And she would tell me sometimes that the nurse wouldn't take Paula seriously when she didn't feel well in the middle of the night, had to be changed or something was going on. And her sister thanked her for watching out for Paula. And then the day came when Paula was ready to leave. And I told the woman in the middle, I said, "Whoa, I guess you're pretty excited to get Chatty Cathy over here gone and get the window seat, the window bed, right?" And she looked at me, she says, "No, not really." And her sister and I looked at her, I go, "Really?" She goes, "I have had the most beautiful conversations in the middle of the night with Paula. She has brought me such joy and deep insight into my own life." And her sister looked at me like, "Oh, she's gone crazy, But I understood that. That's why I took Paula in. I understood. At this really deep level, I knew exactly what she was talking about. And I said, "Well, you're going to be going home soon, right?" Because I assumed that she had something that she would be leaving. She said, "No, actually, I have a brain tumor, and I have 6 weeks to live. And I felt like I was going to be a burden to my children and my husband. So I chose to be here to die." And she said, "And I'm very sad that Paula's going because she gave me something so precious And I'm going to be very sad when she leaves. And the look on her sister's face was, I don't know, amazement, shock. And the woman started to cry, I started to cry, and her sister just stood there. And as we left, her sister, who is very stoic, said to me out the door, I never thought my sister had value. I never thought my sister had value in this world. The moment of recognition for her sister was a spiritual awakening. All of us have worthiness. All of us have worthiness. And that is why judgment cannot be held in our hearts. From our heads, let us release this judgment to our hearts and then to our hands, to take action, to remember, to give grace to another, and even give grace to ourselves, because so many times we need it ourselves. And in this time of struggle, great atrocities, wars, pain, cruelty in our country, we have to hold compassion. It is the saving grace for our survival. Without it, I don't think it's our purpose. Without it, we're here for that. We have those struggles. We have those darkness. We need to work whatever they are. It's a lot of work. But to be woke is the most beautiful thing we could ever ask for. That is enlightenment. Thank you. Let us go into a prayer. Thank you for being here and letting me share my stories. It's important. I know that Ernest Holmes said, "It is by design that we are divine, not by merit." There is nothing you can do to make you more than you already are. You are a gift to this earth in the image and likeness of the divine universal intelligence that said, yes, this is it. You are it. May you search in your mind for the thoughts that uplift you. May you bring it into your heart to let it expand to all creatures, to all of life, and release that tension of opposites, to remember the oneness, and to hold fiercely the idea that the world can shift to their heart. And that by example of being compassionate, by the example of doing your work, you clear the way as the example, not the exception, but by the example of someone who's working through the darkness and lighting the light in your own heart, in your own mind, so that the world will be so illuminated that the darkness just can't exist. I praise and honor you being here today, for the struggles, for all the things, for all the cruelty and all the darkness that prevails sometimes in the corners of this world. And I know you matter. Your mind and your heart matters. And what you do with your hands matters. So thank you. Thank you, divine intelligence, presence, God, Spirit, for having this experience to rise above the darkness and to hold that light after the hours of working through our own struggle to light our own. And with that, I'm in such great gratitude that I say, yes, that light and truth, social justice and compassion will prevail. Not without struggle, but with the beauty knowing it is by divine design that it will prevail. And so it is.